affect the brain directly, causing disability. So as far as obesity goes, if their BMI is 30 or more, then they are considered obese. The the biggest issue with this population, as far as sudden issues that may come up while you're in front of the patient, would be respiratory issues, and that's if they're laying supine. And the reason for that is that all that weight on their stomach, all that mass, when they're sitting supine, goes down and will push up against the diaphragm. And that weight against the diaphragm doesn't allow the diaphragm to contract downward, or at least not enough to get a very good tidal volume in the patient. So it's a quick fix for these patients if they are having issues breathing after you've laid them down. And it's to sit them up. If you just sit them up, their stomach goes back down, and the diaphragm is free to do its thing and keep the patient alive. So let's see, special measures to care for obese patients. The one thing that you may come across, I'm not sure if Fresno has it, but I'm pretty sure they do. It's called a bariatric ambulance, and a bariatric ambulance is just a bit. It's just there's more space inside of it. It's bigger. The gurney itself, the stretcher, is also bigger and designed to carry more weight. And that's one thing that you might come across. Let's see, allow patient to assume comfortable position for breathing, and we talked about that. Have enough assistance when lifting or moving patients. Now, I do know that nowadays everybody's switching over to the hydraulic gurneys, so you just push a button and it goes up and down. However, those batteries die, and from my experience, they die fairly quickly. So with that is if your battery does die and your patient is a bariatric, they are obese, you always want to get help to lift this patient. Do not break your back. And the way you lift patients that are obese is by having one person on each corner of that gurney to lift up. Sometimes you might even want to have two additional people on each side of the patient, and that depends on how heavy the person is and how strong the EMTs or paramedics on the scene are as well, though. See, autism affects 1 in 68 children. The biggest thing with autism, see, affects ability to communicate. Yes, it does make it kind of hard to communicate with them. However, there are different levels of autism, and some patients you can actually have a conversation with. May need to modify assessment techniques and treatment protocols. So whenever you have an autistic patient, it's their show. You have to go at their pace. Let me see what else they have on autism. ABCS of dealing with patients who have autism. So awareness, basic, calm, safety, and I believe we go over every one of them. So awareness on the ABCS of autism. So EMT must adapt approach and strategies to patients. So yeah, so it's their show, go at their pace. Disruption of routine not well tolerated by patient. So with that being said, just I don't like comparing an autistic person to a child, but just how a child would, but it's the only example I have, so I'm gonna do it. Just how a child sometimes would like to bring a blanket or a toy with them just because it makes them feel good or makes them happy. A lot of times, autistic patients, if you have to take them out of their environment, that becomes an issue because they don't like change. So if your patient wants to take anything with them that makes them feel comfortable, something that they're used to having every day or seeing every day, by all means do it. Along that too, it's usually if you have an autistic patient, from my experience, that I can recall, we've always had a caregiver that accompanies that patient. So that also, if you can bring someone that's there with them on a daily basis, also a good idea for these patients. So you may have escalation or meltdown. Yes, they will. They'll yeah, like it says here, yeah, involuntary tantrum. They will throw a tantrum if things are out of line according to them and their daily schedule. So taking your time is key with these patients. basic. Keep your instructions basic. Absolutely. Be straight to the point. Don't elaborate. So, for example, if you were to tell, not all, but some autistic patients, if you were to tell them, please take a chair, that for most of us, we would understand that as, go ahead and sit down, take a chair, take a seat. An autistic patient may be confused when that, because they think, or they may think, that you literally mean take that seat, pick it up. So you want to be very direct and very literal when talking to an autistic patient. See, calm creates calm. That's in any situation. But any patient that ever throws a tantrum or acts out of character, just be calm. Eventually, if you stay calm, your patient will feed off of that, and they will become calm. A clear, controlled voice, empathy, compassion, and take extra time. That last one is super important, of course, unless life-threatening emergency. Besides that, take your time. It's their show. Safety, always be safe. Begin treatment where patient is found. So yeah, it's probably best if you do most of your assessment on the scene with this patient. Of course, unless it's an emergency and or a life threat, then get him going and just figure it out. But if there is no threat to life or limb, then this patient, you're better off doing as much as possible on the scene in their normal environment. See, remove things that may aggravate child. Do a toe to head survey. Again, we talked about the whole toe to head survey, and that has to do. It's a psychological thing with a child feeling kind of warm to you, and it's just it's better to approach them from the toe than from their head. And I can see why, because if you start your survey at the head, that might um, startle somebody, as opposed to starting at the toes and explaining what you're doing. And by the time you get to the head, they have complete understanding of what's going on. So that does make sense, actually, when you think about it. See, consider taking breaks during exam. And again, it's all situational. It really depends a lot on your patient. See, let patient tell you when ready for next step. And and almost every single assessment slide, they emphasize always tell your patient what you're gonna do before you do it. That is especially true when talking about pediatrics and autistic patients, okay? Super important. All right, so now that we're done with those slides, I'm gonna show a video